It's all good and well that we use JetEngine for our custom post types, our meta fields, and we've gone and created 6 classes, but we're not presenting or showing it off to the outside world anywhere. Let's sort that out and create our blog archive, and we're going to stick it on an example homepage. You could stick it on a blog archive page, you could stick it on a blog template page as well, and there are multiple ways to do this. I will, for the purpose of this tutorial, be using the Elementor loop grid because a lot of you are using that now, but I want to very briefly show you the JetEngine listings feature. So let's say you weren't using the loop grid now. You would go over to JetEngine, listings, and you would click add new. What you would now do is almost create the template. So we've got 6 classes or 6 sessions. So how are they going to look? So we are going to say the listing source is a post. And we are going to say that this is going to come from the sessions post type. Okay. You do have other options up here as well. Maybe you're going to create it where it's based on like terms or a taxonomy as well. But we are specifically focusing on our sessions post type. So we've got that posts sessions. We're going to go and give this a name. Call it sessions listing so we know what it is. And where will this be visible? Well, we've only got Elementor on here at the moment, and we're happy to use that. So we're going to click create listing item. This is very similar to what you would be doing if you were kind of creating a loop grid. That being said, though, you could, if you want, go and drop a loop grid as well, which I would probably say is not a good idea. So what we're going to do is go over here and we are going to go and add in a container. And I'm going to do this really quickly because I really want to focus on the loop grid aspect. I'm going to drop in a title and I'm also going to drop in a image as well, just like that. I'm going to go over to my title. I'm going to get rid of it. I'm not going to stylize this, by the way. Just want to get you to understand how you could use the listings feature. We're going to click the dynamic tag, the little stack over there. We're going to scroll down until we get to post title. That will now bring over one of the items, extreme weight. Well, when I say item, I mean the session. Then we're going to click on the image. I'm not going to add one because if you add one here, it'll be the same image for every one of our sessions, which is not good and defeats the object of why we've even created this. What you do is go over and click the dynamic tag. You can see the stack over there. You click that and you then click featured image. And what will happen is the featured image will appear. Now, I'm very simplicity for simplicity, simplistic reasons, just going to go and click update. That's it. I'm not adding in any other details. I'm keeping it really simple. And if we go over to JetEngine listings, you will now see sessions listing has been created. Let's now go over to our fake page. And this is something that I probably haven't shown you much of at the moment. This is just an example page that we've created in Elementor, okay? There's nothing fantastical going about it, except we have a hero banner. We have a container that's got a background image and some text in there with a call to action button. We then have another parent container with 2 child containers. This is just a background container image with some text. We have another child container with text, and we have an image. Now try to ensure that everything is kind of placed right at the borders of the left and right, just so it's a full page effect. And then down here, we have a third container. This container contains within here, and I'll show you here, I've called it blog. It contains 3 child containers. Why have I done 3 child containers? Because I'm going after a particular layout. Container number 1, which is over here, this contains basically nothing more than a call to action. The call to action widget that I've used from Elementor basically means I can have an image and I can have my words overlaying on top of the image. I could add in hover effects as well, which I've chosen not to do. You could also just add in a background image and you could add in a headline widget and just, that would obviously sit over it. But I added in the call to action widget because then I could very easily go, oh, okay, we're going to go and drop in a button as well. And you can see it starts to add it in there without me having to mess around with too many widgets. So the CTA is one of my favorites. Anyway, what I'm going to do is in this child container, and by the way, this parent container is set as a row with wrap, okay? It's set as a row with wrap. It is also set to be 940 in width, the parent container. Container number 1, or child container 1, is set to 300 pixels in width. Child container number 2 is set to 600. So that means I'm getting a 40 gap here. Now, I am actually going to mess around with that later on. I just wanted to put it in there as a holder, but I will be modifying that later on and you'll get to see that. And then we have child container number 3, which is basically it's full width 100% like that, because it's using up the full estate of the 940 that we currently have. Again, I may adjust that later on once I've got my items in. I will be using Loop Grid, but we've just gone and done a JetEngine listings. So let's go and drop that in just to show you how it would have looked. I'm going to go here and I'm going to type in listing. And there we have the listing grid. This is from JetEngine. Let me drop that into child container number 3 at the moment. There we go. We have the listing grid. It doesn't really return anything because it doesn't know what to return. So we click the drop down and I'm now going to just type list and you can see sessions listing. Let's hit that and you can now see what has been returned. So it's gone and brought back the title and the image. It doesn't matter that that image was really big when I created the listing, okay? It's brought it back. So here is where you could, if you don't want to use the loop grid, use the JetEngine listings, and you can decide on the number of columns and how big you're going to have it be. I mean, that's a bit probably not great because we've got the word now wrapping over. So when you are building your listing, think about your layout. So you might have a container, you might have a child container, you might have a particular height. If you know exactly what height you're going to go for, space between, you might be wrapping as well with row. Now let's just pop that back to be 3 so that looks okay. You could do a post query. So you may say that I'm only want to pull through everything that has got Ryan Singh in there. So what? Because that's not a category or a taxonomy, it's a custom field. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say that this will be a meta query. I'm going to pop in a trainer. I'm going to say equal to, and I'm then going to type in Ryan Singh. And you can straight away see that it's now only brought through extreme weights. So that allows you to take things a little bit further with what you want a particular show. I mean, there are other options on here as well, enable sliders. But I want to focus on the loop grid, but we are still going to be using the JetEngine. So let me get rid of that for a moment. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go over and search for loop grid, and I'm going to drop that in over here. And then we're going to go and create our templates. What we're going to do is go and add in some items, and we're now going to build out what our session preview is going to look like. We're going to hit the plus sign, and we're going to go for a container like that. I know what you're saying. You're going to look at this and go, damn, that's really, really small and ugly to look at. We are going to mess around with this, and then we're going to jump back into it just to make it easier on the eye for us. You could also, if you want, go and create a template in Elementor as well. Just go and create a template, and then what you do is you go and pop the template code into here. Well, you'll see that when we do save them back. So if you don't want to do it here, a bit like the listing grid, go and create it elsewhere, and then you can bring it over. You could also have done it all in listing grid and then just copy over the container as well. There's many ways you can make this work for you. Into this container, I am going to go and drop in a post title, and I'm also going to drop in a featured image. Now, you're probably going, hey, nothing's coming through. Don't worry, there are 2 ways to help yourself out with this. Number 1 is you could go down to the settings down here and go to preview settings. Now, the reason we're not getting anything back is because this is defaulting to post. Well, we know we don't want to be there. We actually want to be on sessions because it's a custom post type. So go and click that. Then I'm going to go and bring back one of our items, extreme weights like that. Let's then hit apply and preview, and then that will bring back what we got. However, my idea of a layout is going to be 2 items on child container 2, and then child container 3 is going to be 3 items. So basically we get a grid of basically like 2 by 3 by 2. Can't get my numbers out there. So now that we've done that, I'm going to go and hit save and back just to change my layout, because at the moment, look, the reason it was small is because it was cramming 3 of them into that space that was 600 pixels. So we're going to go and click on the loop grid. We're going to go to columns, and I'm going to change that to be a 2. And I'm going to say items per page is also 2. Now I know what my estate is. So I'm going to try and make everything fit within that. Now let's start modifying it. So we're going to go back over to our loop grid and we're going to hit edit template, because now we know what our estate is. If you were modifying it when it was set to be a 3 across and it was really small, you're not really modifying it to work for what you want. Now, I will just mention that I'm not focusing on the mobile responsive mode here because you would obviously go in and adjust things by going to the mobile mode. But I want to just get across how we can get this to work because we are using a lot of dynamic fields. Let's go over to the very first one. We have our title at the top. I'm going to rearrange that and pop that below the image like that. Again, this is the beauty about using the loop grid or even the JetEngine listings as well. So we have our featured image. I'm going to go and set this to be a full. I'm going to go over to my container and I'm going to just zero out so that everything is now up against the border. I don't mind that because I am going to force a bit of gap between them anyway. I'm going to go over to my featured image, ensure that the image size is set to full because I want to get the full resolution. I'm then going to go to style and I'm going to set this to be 100% width because that is exactly what it would be. Now, I am going to be very specific. I am going to pop in a 300 height and I'm going to ensure that the object fit is set to cover. The reason I'm doing that is because I want all of my items in it to be no more than 300 in width and 300 in height. I want the perfect square. Because if you have got images that are a mixture of square, vertical, landscape, you want to kind of make sure you have a bit of consistency in the layout. So by doing that, that is what happens. And if you set this to default, what happens is that you get a bit of a stretch effect. Let me show you. If I was to go and do something like that right now with 424, that looks totally wrong. I don't know what kind of weight training you're doing, but I would go and speak to your personal trainer. You go and set cover, it now distributes it properly, or aligns it properly, or doesn't skew it improperly. But let me just pop this back to be 300 like that. And also you do have the ability to go with top center, center, bottom left, and all of that as well. First thing I'm going to do is modify my title. I don't like it being that big. I'm actually going to make it be a white. I've made it be an REM 1.4 and it's a weight of 600. It's a Tahoma, just a system font because this is just a dummy website. I recommend you do custom loaded fonts. And you might want to use a font clamp calculation. I'll put a link to that in the video description as well. That would mean that you could have responsive font resizing from desktop, tablet to mobile. And it's a great thing to do. Let's go and add in another field. And I'm going to go for the class type one now. Now, you could, if you want, go and drop in a heading field like this. Let's just drop it in underneath there. Get rid of the wording. Go and click on the dynamic tag and scroll down until you get to custom field or JetEngine. Click that, and then for our field, I will pick type, and that will return weight training for us. That's one way you could have done it. Or we could have gone and typed in dynamic or dyne, grabbed dynamic field. Let's drop that in over there. And it's already, it's brought over the title. We can't really see it that well. So let me just change the font of that to be a white. And the source of it is post-term user object data. This is kind of only going to give you kind of like some of the standard things that you would normally have within a post type, like your content, your excerpt, your post title. What we actually need is a metadata. So our meta field, we will scroll up there and we will pick type. Now, here's one of the problems, and don't be afraid of this. We instantly get an error, but it kind of gives you a clue over here about callbacks. And it's not that difficult to sort out, so please don't worry. You scroll down until you get to filter field output. You click that, and then I'm going to select one of the callbacks, and you do have a wide range. I'm going to go for checkbox field values. Now, this should only return weight training, as you can see over here. If, however, this was weight training and aerobics, I would then go, well, how do you want to separate them? Do you want to do it with a comma? Do you want to do it with a pipe? Do you want to do it with a full stop? Do you want to do it with a hyphen? So you could add in these delimit. I mean, that's way too many hyphens there. But you can add in a delimiter there. And this will become more relevant when we start to add in further fields. Now, here's what I would recommend you do. I am going to use their dynamic field just because of the flexibility you get with how it returns and also with the delimiter field. I'm going to go and add in the pipe like that. And I'm going to add, sorry, let me just do that properly. I'm going to add in the pipe like that. And we're going to go with the checkbox value. I'm going to modify the style of this, go to my typography. It's already going to default to Tahoma, to be honest. I'm going to make the weight of this be a 500 and I'm going to set the REM for this to be a 1.2. Now you will notice they are quite spaced out from one another at the moment. So I'm going to go back to my child container, go to my layout, and I'm going to ensure that the gap between the elements is set to 0. I'm going to duplicate that dynamic field, and this time I'm going to change it to now show what the cost would be. I can get rid of the filter field output because it's already bringing back the number, so I don't need to worry. It's because it was a checkbox before, you see. If you had a select field as well, you just got to bear in mind that it's kind of going to go, well, what do you want me to pull back? Do you want me to pull it back as a list? Do you want all the values? What do you really want from me? But what I'm going to do is customize this a little bit further. So we have 45, which doesn't mean anything, right? So we're going to go over to where we have customized field output. And at the moment, we have percentage sign and S. And I'm going to go and pop in a pound sign there. And you can see what it's done. It's now gone and popped that in. And if I could put in a dollar sign, you would get the dollar sign as well. In fact, I'll leave it as dollar because I think the international audience, you're probably going to understand that a little bit better. So there we go. We got $45. I'm also going to go and drop in a button so that you can now click this to go and see more. And I'm now going to modify the style of this button. I'm going to change the content to also say see more. Feed me, see more, feed me. Some of you will not understand that quote. Right, okay, I'm also just going to mess around with the padding. So we got a 5 at the top and bottom, 10 on the left and right. Now, I want my button to be next door to the cost, okay? So I'm going to go to my cost field or the dynamic field, go to advanced, and I'm going to set this to be a custom. And then I'm also going to do it to the button as well and set that to be a custom. Now, at the moment, nothing has changed. So let's go over to our container that contains everything at the moment. When we hit row, it goes all messed up, but don't worry about that. We then go and hit wrap. And what now starts to happen is some of our items start to wrap a little bit. And it's because now it starts to condense the size. They're no longer taking up the full 100%. But we can modify that. I'm going to go to my weight training one, and I'm going to set that to be a full width. So it forces the cost and the see more button to go below. I'm now going to go over to my cost one, and I'm going to make sure this is still on custom, but I'm going to set the width of it to be 75. You could, if you want, go and use percentage. I sometimes like to be very specific over my sizing, so I've gone for 75. And this button over here, there we go, and that fits okay. One thing I did do, which I forgot to do, is set my full width to be 300 pixel. Now, you will recall that I made this be a 300 and this be a 600, and we have an estate of 940. We are going to have a gap in here. So I need to modify this, but I'll do that later on. Let's just get this built out. So we've got extreme weights, weight training, we have our cost, and we have our button. Now, our button isn't perfectly centralized at the moment. So I'm going to go back over to my parent container. I'm going to say align items to be centered. Because if you look here, can you see that button? It's raised or elevated a little bit. When you put to align it to be in the center, it is now in the center. Now let's just space this out a little bit because the items are looking very cramped up at the moment. So we are now going to go over to the weight training dynamic field, and I'm going to say, give me 5 from the top and bottom like that. Now I want all of those items to actually sit on the image, but I don't want to sit there doing negative top margin, negative top margin, negative top margin all the time. I'm going to drop them all into another container. So we have our container that contains the image and everything else. I'm now going to drop in another container, which currently is here. So this container, we're going to make it be zeroed out. I'm going to go to my layout and ensure it's a full width. We're going to move this to be under the featured image, and then into here, I'm going to drop in all of my fields. Now I could have done this from the get-go. Now let's move our container up. And there are many ways you can do this. So you could start to use a bit of advanced. So you might go, oh, we're just going to do a bit of negative margin like that. Or for simplicity, you could just go to that container, go to position, set it to be absolute, and then position it to be at the bottom like that, vertical orientation. The trouble with that, though, is the words could get lost, especially when you start to have lighter images. So we're going to go back over to our container, go to style, go and give this a background color like black, like that. And then I'm now just going to drop down the opacity to be something like this. When we hit save and back, we have 300, 300, and 300. But I just want to modify the size of this a little bit. I've modified the width of my loop grid to be 640. Our parent container is a 940. Child container 1 that just contains an image is 300. The second child container is a 640. I'm going to have a 20 gap here and a 20 gap over there. So here's what we do. We go over to our loop grid, which we've already built out. We've got a 2x2 over there. And when I click style, I'm going to say the gap between the columns is 20 pixel. So you can see there we now have 20. We've got a little bit of a gap over here. Don't worry about that. We're going to go back over to our child container number 2, which contains a loop grid, and it's currently set to be a 640. I'm now going to set the width of this to be 620. So that contains 300 plus my 20. And then I'm going to go to my advanced tab and say, give me a 20 on the left. That is now perfectly sitting within my 940. 300, 20, 300, 20 inside the loop grid, and 300 again. Now, I've got my 2 items, and the wording there is legible. I mean, I might feel like I need to make it a bit darker. Well, that's okay. Go and click Edit Template. You might need to hit Save. And remember, you can do a lot of this in the listing grid, the listings, sorry, for JetEngine as well. Go to my child container, and I'm going to make this be a little bit darker because I think it deserves it, especially where we got that aerobics word over there. We hit update and we hit save and back, and you'll now see the wording there is a little bit more clearer. So what am I going to do for the bottom one now? Because I've already got 2 posts here and I want to continue it with post 3, 4 and 5. Well, this is what you do. You go and copy the loop grid and you paste it into child container or grandchild container number 3. We click on the loop grid and we change the number of columns to now be 3. And I'm going to say the number of items is 3 as well. And child container number 3 is set to 100% width. If you now view that, that is the layout we get. In fact, I'm just going to change the parent container because let's go with 100 and 100 like that. So that is a pretty unique looking post grid that we have there. You could obviously, you might feel like the image is too light in a way, so you might want to make the spacing bigger, go and adjust your values. But we have an image, we have item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4, item 5. But the obvious problem is we've got duplication. Let's sort that out. Okay, you go over to your loop grid. We go over to the content. Let me just move the navigator out over there. We go to query. It's already using sessions. We go to exclude. I am now going to offset by 2 because items 1 and 2 are already above. That was a really simple way of bringing over your post title, dynamic fields, and giving a bit of a preview over what the classes possibly are. In the next video, we're going to cover off creating your single post template, whereby when you now click into here, well, now I need to see the details. And now we're going to be pulling over a load more meta fields from JetEngine's custom post type.